Earth's Deliverance, the lost human returns from the void. The year was 2347, and Earth was dying. Admiral Marsh stood alone on the observation deck of Sentinel-7, the last major orbital defense station still operating above Earth. Through the reinforced glass, she could see the blue and green marble of humanity spinning slowly below. It was beautiful, even now. Perhaps especially now, knowing that these might be the final hours anyone would see it this way. She pressed her palm against the cold glass and felt the weight of 8 billion lives resting on her shoulders. 14 years ago, the Dominion had arrived in human space without warning. Their world ships had emerged from faster-than-light travel near the colony of New Geneva, and within 6 hours, 2 million people were dead. They did not negotiate. They did not explain their reasons. They simply killed. Colony after colony fell in the years that followed. Station, the Mars settlements, the mining operations in the asteroid belt. Humanity fought back with everything they had, but they were older, stronger, and utterly without mercy. Their plasma lances could cut through human ship armor like paper. Their shields could absorb weapons fire that would destroy a small moon, and their numbers seemed endless. Now only Earth remained, the final refuge of a species that had once dreamed of spreading across the galaxy. And beyond the moon, 200 warships were gathering for the killing blow. The door behind hissed open, and Commander Cole stepped onto the observation deck. He was young for his rank, only 34, but the war had aged him. Gray streaked his dark hair, and his eyes carried the haunted look that everyone who had survived the advance seemed to share. "Admiral," he said quietly, "the fleet commanders are assembled in the war room. They're waiting for your orders." Did not turn from the window. "What orders can I give them? We have 37 ships. Half of them are held together with welding patches and prayers. They have 200 destroyers out there, plus support craft we haven't even counted." "The people need to hear something," said. "The soldiers need to believe there's a chance." "Is there?" Finally turned to face him. "Is there really a chance? Because I've run the simulations 100 times and every single one ends the same way. We fight, we die, Earth burns." Was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "My grandfather used to tell me stories about the early days of space exploration, about how humanity sent ships into the unknown with nothing but courage and hope. He said that humans had always faced impossible odds, and sometimes, against all logic, they won anyway." Almost smiled. "Your grandfather sounds like a romantic." "He was, but he was also right about one thing." Stepped closer. "Humans don't give up, even when we should, even when there's no rational reason to keep fighting. We fight anyway, that's who we are." Looked at the young commander for a long moment. Then she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. "You're right. Even if we can't win, we can make them remember us. We can make them understand that humanity didn't go quietly." She walked past him toward the door. "Let's go address the fleet." The war room of Sentinel-7 was a massive circular chamber filled with holographic displays and communication terminals. 40 officers stood at attention as entered, representing every ship in Earth's defense fleet. Their faces showed fear, determination, grief, and anger in equal measure. These were the last warriors of humanity, and they knew exactly what they were facing. Took her place at the central podium and looked out at her commanders. She saw Captain Dalton of the cruiser Defiance, his face grim. She saw Commander Wright of the destroyer Swift, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. She saw Lieutenant Commander Vance of the patrol ship Guardian, barely 28 years old, and trying not to show how terrified he was. These were her people. These were the ones who would stand with her at the end. "I won't lie to you," began, her voice carrying across the silent room. "The situation is exactly as bad as you think it is. The fleet outnumbers us 6-1. Their technology is superior to ours. In any conventional engagement, we will lose." She paused, letting the words sink in. "But I'm not here to give you false hope. I'm here to give you the truth. We are the last line of defense for 8 billion people. Behind us is our. Behind us are our families, our friends, everyone we have ever loved. There is nowhere left to retreat. His voice hardened. So we will not retreat. We will stand. We will fight. And when the history of this war is written, whether by human hands or alien ones, it will say that Earth's defenders faced impossible odds and did not flinch. Captain Dalton stepped forward. "Admiral, what are your orders?" "We form a defensive sphere around Earth at the point. When they advance, we hit them with everything we have. Every missile, every cannon, every fighter we can launch. We make them pay for every inch of space they take." "And then," Commander Wright asked quietly. Met her eyes. "And then we die well. We die fighting. We die as humans have always died when faced with extinction. On our feet, with weapons in our hands and defiance in our hearts." The room was silent. Then one by one the officers began to nod. They understood. They accepted. They would do what needed to be done. "Dismissed," said. "Report to your ships. We deploy in 1 hour." As the officers filed out, approached, "That was one hell of a speech, Admiral." "Speeches are easy," replied. "Victory is hard." She turned to the main tactical display, where the fleet was represented by hundreds of red dots clustered beyond the moon. "Have the sensor teams detected any change in their formation?" "Negative. They're holding position, probably waiting for additional reinforcements or conducting final preparations." "How long until they move?" "Based on their previous attack patterns, best estimate is 6 to 8 hours." Nodded slowly. 6 hours to prepare for the end of everything. History will say we didn't have enough time." "History will say we didn't give up," countered. Despite everything, smiled. "You really are romantic." "Someone has to be." The hours passed with painful slowness. Throughout the orbital stations and on ships across the fleet, humans made their final preparations. Some wrote letters to loved ones that might never be read. Others prayed to gods they had ignored for years. A few simply sat in silence, staring at pictures of families they would never see again. On the cruiser Defiance, Captain Dalton walked through his ship's corridors, speaking with crew members, offering what comfort he could. He stopped at the medical bay, where Dr. Caroline Shaw was organizing supplies that would likely never be used. "Doc," he said quietly, "you should try to get some rest." Caroline looked up at him with tired eyes. "Rest? We're about to fight a battle we can't win. What's the point of resting?" "The point is that you'll need to be sharp when the shooting starts. We're going to have wounded." "We're going to have dead," Caroline said flatly. "Lots of dead, more dead than I can possibly treat." Sat down on one of the medical beds. He and Caroline had served together for 12 years, ever since the Defiance was commissioned. She had patched him up after a dozen battles, held his hand when he received news of his brother's death at New Geneva. "Do you remember what you told me after died?" he asked. Caroline's expression softened. "I told you that grief was the price we pay for loving someone." "And what else?" She sighed. "I told you that the only way to honor the dead was to keep living, to keep fighting, to make their sacrifice mean something." "That's still true," said. "Even now, especially now, they want to erase us from existence. They want to make it like humanity never existed at all. But as long as one of us is still breathing, still fighting, they haven't won." "That's a nice sentiment," Caroline said, "but it doesn't change the math. 200 ships against 37. "No, it doesn't, but it changes how we face those odds." Stood up. "Get some rest, Caroline, that's an order." She managed a small smile. "Since when do I take orders from you?" "Since always, you just pretend not to." As left the medical bay, alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. He broke into a run, racing toward the bridge. "Report!" he shouted as he burst through the door. His executive officer, Lieutenant Park, looked up from the sensor console with wide eyes. "Captain, We have a massive spatial distortion forming at coordinates 77 Mark III. Energy readings are completely off the scale. The negative, sir, this is something else, something we've never seen before. Stared at where space itself seemed to be tearing apart. A wound of light and impossible colors was opening in the void, growing larger by the second. Then something began to emerge from the rift. It was a ship, but calling it a ship felt like calling a hurricane a breeze. The vessel that emerged from the spatial tier was enormous, 12 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapon platforms and sensor arrays. Its hull was patched, covered with strange symbols and modifications that suggested decades of constant battle and repair. It moved with the slow majesty of a mountain learning to walk. "My God," whispered, "what is that?" His hands gripped the armrests of his command chair so tightly his knuckles went white. He recognized the basic configuration of the hull, even under all the modifications. He recognized the distinctive profile of the command tower. And when the registry beacon activated, broadcasting an identification code that had been silent for 43 years, he felt his heart stop. "That's the Covenant," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the USS Covenant." On the bridge of Sentinel-7, Admiral Marsh had the same realization at the same moment. She stared at the sensor data like a woman seeing a ghost. Because in a very real sense, that's exactly what this was. "Admiral," said urgently, "the Covenant was lost in 2304 during the Andromeda expedition. There's no way it could still be operational." "And yet there it is," replied. "Hail them all frequencies." The communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Vance, worked her console with trembling fingers. "Channel open, Admiral." For a long moment there was nothing but static. Then a voice cut through, tired and weathered and unmistakably human. "This is Captain Daniel Harrison of the United Earth Covenant to Earth Command. We apologize for our delayed return. We got a little lost." The bridge crew of Sentinel-7 sat in stunned silence. Daniel Harrison knew that name. Everyone who had studied the history of human space exploration knew that name. He had been 31 years old when the Covenant vanished, a rising star in the fleet, selected to command humanity's most ambitious deep space mission. If he was still alive, he would be 74 now. "Captain Harrison," said slowly, "this is Admiral Marsh, commanding officer of Earth's Defense Fleet. Do you have any idea how long you've been gone?" 43 years, 7 months, and 12 days, Harrison replied. "Give or take, time got a little strange where we were." There was a pause. "Admiral, we're reading a large hostile fleet beyond the moon and significant damage to orbital infrastructure. What's the situation?" Almost laughed. The man had been missing for over 4 decades, had just emerged from an impossible tier in space, and his first concern was tactical assessment. "We're under siege, Captain. An alien species called the has been waging a war of extermination against humanity for 14 years. Earth is the last human settlement still standing. That fleet you're seeing is preparing to finish us off." "Understood." Harrison's voice hardened. "Admiral, I'm going to need you to order your fleet to stand down." "Excuse me. Your ships are outdated and, if they engage they'll be destroyed in minutes. Pull them back and let us handle this." Stepped forward. "Admiral, with all due respect to Captain Harrison, we can't trust a single ship to defend Earth, even one that size." Held up a hand to silence him. "Captain Harrison, you've been gone for 43 years. You have no idea what they are capable of. Their technology is centuries beyond ours." "Admiral Marsh." Harrison's voice carried a weight of experience that made his breath catch. "I've spent 43 years traveling through regions of space that humanity has never mapped. I've fought battles against enemies that make them look like children playing with sticks. My ship has been upgraded with technology from civilizations your scientists can't even imagine. Trust me when I tell you this. They are not a threat to the Covenant." Looked at, he shook his head, clearly skeptical. She looked at Amy, who seemed caught between hope and disbelief. She looked at the tactical display, where the Covenant hung in space like a promise of salvation. "Captain," she said finally, "I've been preparing to die today. I've given speeches about fighting until the last breath. I've accepted that Earth was going to fall. Now you're telling me that one ship, your ship, can change everything." "Yes, Admiral, that's exactly what I'm telling you." "Then prove it. Show me what the Covenant can do." There was a brief silence. Then Harrison said, "With pleasure, watch carefully." On the bridge of the Covenant, Captain Daniel Harrison rose from his command chair. His body was old now, 74 years of hard living written in every line of his face, every gray hair on his head. But his eyes were sharp, his mind clear, and his resolve unshaken. He looked around at his bridge crew, at the men and women who had traveled with him through the impossible reaches of the universe. Commander Grace, his first officer, stood at the tactical station. She had been 26 when they left Earth, a promising young officer with her whole career ahead of her. Now she was 69, her hair white, her hands steady on the console, her experience beyond measure. Lieutenant Victor manned the weapons station. His left arm had been replaced with a mechanical prosthetic after an encounter with hostile entities in the Reach. The artificial limb was a gift from the Mechanoid Collective, capable of interfacing directly with the ship systems. Ensign Tommy sat at navigation, barely 40 years old, one of the children born aboard the Covenant during its long journey. He had never seen Earth, only heard stories about it from the older crew members. Now he was about to help save a world he knew only from tales and dreams. And scattered throughout the bridge were others, some human, some not. A tall figure with blue-tinged skin and extra joints in its limbs stood at the science station. Its name was, and it was a refugee from a dying world in the Triangulum Galaxy, one of dozens of aliens who had joined the Covenant's crew over the decades. "All hands battle stations," Daniel commanded. "Bring the primary weapons online. Target the flagship." Grace worked her console. "Singularity cannons charging, Captain. Target acquired. The flagship is the large vessel at the center of their formation, designated Dominator of Worlds." "Appropriate name," Daniel murmured. "Let's show them what domination really looks like." The forward section of the Covenant began to glow. The singularity cannons had been a gift from a species called the Graviton Lords, beings of pure energy who existed in the spaces between galaxies. They had given the technology to the Covenant in exchange for help defending their realm against an invasion of creatures from another dimension. The weapons worked by generating and focusing gravitational singularities, miniature black holes that could be directed at enemy vessels. Across the void, they had finally noticed the newcomer. War Master Ron, commanding officer of the invasion fleet, studied the sensor data with growing unease. His species had conquered 11 star systems. They had exterminated 4 sentient races. They did not know fear. And yet something about this strange vessel made his thorax plates itch with ancient instinct. "Identify that ship," he commanded. His tactical officer chittered nervously. "War Master, our databases have no record of such a configuration. The energy signatures suggest weapon systems beyond our capability to analyze." "One ship," Ron said dismissively. "Regardless of its capabilities, it is still only one ship. Continue preparations for the assault on Earth." "War Master, the alien vessel is hailing us." Ron considered ignoring the transmission, but curiosity got the better of him. "Put it through." The face that appeared on his was strange. Soft skin, only 2 eyes, hair like dried grass on top of its head. A human. Ron had seen captured humans before, had watched them die in his interrogation chambers. They were weak, fragile, easy to break. "This is Captain Daniel Harrison of the Covenant," the human said. "War Master, I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw your fleet from this system. Take it." Ron's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Human, your species is already defeated. Your colonies are dust. Your fleet is a collection of obsolete relics. One ship, no matter how large, cannot change the inevitable. Earth will fall, and humanity will be erased from the galaxy. You're wrong, Harrison replied calmly. I've seen things you can't imagine, War Master. I've traveled to places where the rules of physics are just suggestions. I've fought enemies that could destroy your entire civilization with a thought. You think you're powerful. You think you understand what power means. You don't, but I'm about to teach you. Ron severed the transmission with a contemptuous gesture. Destroy that ship. 50 destroyers broke formation and accelerated toward the Covenant. Their plasma lances charged, their missile tubes opened, their crews eager to eliminate this arrogant intruder. They never had a chance. The Covenant's singularity cannons fired. Twin beams of compressed gravity crossed the void in the blink of an eye, striking the lead destroyers. The ships didn't explode. They didn't break apart. They simply collapsed inward, crushed into spheres of matter no larger than marbles. One moment they were warships crewed by thousands. The next, they were debris. The remaining attackers hesitated, their confidence shaken. That hesitation cost them everything. Deploy the swarm, Daniel ordered. Deep in the Covenant's hangar bays, doors opened. Thousands of small drones poured into space, each one barely larger than a human fist. They were gifts from the mechanoid collective, autonomous weapons capable of disassembling matter at the molecular level. The swarm spread out toward the ships like a cloud of silver death. The drones attached themselves to the enemy hulls and began their work. From the outside, it looked like the ships were dissolving, their metal skins peeling away layer by layer. From the inside, it was much worse. Crew members watched in horror as bulkheads collapsed, as atmosphere vented into space, as their vessels fell apart around them. In 2 minutes, 43 ships were reduced to drifting clouds of metallic dust. On Sentinel-7, Admiral Marsh watched the destruction with her mouth hanging open. She had seen battles before. She had witnessed the overwhelming power of the first hand. But this was something else entirely. This was annihilation on a scale she had never imagined. Admiral said, his voice shaking, the Covenant just destroyed 93 enemy ships in less than 3 minutes. Casualties on our side, 0. That's impossible, Amy whispered. Apparently not, replied. She turned to the communications console. Captain Harrison, what the hell are you? Harrison's voice came back, calm and almost amused. I told you, Admiral. We've been gone a long time. We learned a few things while we were away. The fleet was in chaos. War Master Ron screamed orders at his subordinates, trying to restore discipline to his panicking crews. Nearly half his force had been destroyed in minutes, and he still had no clear understanding of what he was facing. Concentrate all fire on that vessel, he commanded. All ships, maximum weapons output. The remaining warships opened fire. Plasma lances, kinetic rounds, fusion missiles, every weapon in their arsenal streaked toward the Covenant in a coordinated barrage that should have destroyed a small moon. The Covenant's shields flared gold. The attack struck the barrier and simply stopped, their energy absorbed and dissipated. Not a single shot reached the hull. Shield integrity at 94%, Grace reported from her station. Their weapons can't penetrate our defenses. Daniel nodded. He had expected as much. The Covenant's shields were based on technology from a dozen different civilizations, layered and integrated in ways that made them virtually impenetrable to conventional weapons. They were powerful by human standards, but by the standards of what lurked in the deeper reaches of the universe, they were nothing. Victor, Daniel said, target the flagship, full power. Victor adjusted his targeting systems. His mechanical arm interfaced directly with the weapons console, allowing him to control the ship's armaments with the speed of thought. Target locked, Captain. Firing. The singularity cannon spoke again. A beam of compressed gravity crossed the void and struck the Dominator of Worlds. War Master Ron had just enough time to realize what was happening before his flagship collapsed around him. The massive vessel imploded, crushed into a ball of matter that glowed briefly before fading into darkness. With their commander dead and their fleet in ruins, the remaining ships finally broke. They scattered in all directions, desperate to escape the demon that had emerged from nowhere to destroy them. Some attempted to flee toward the outer system. Others tried to engage their faster-than-light drives. None of them made it. The Covenant's secondary weapons opened up, beams of coherent light that tracked and destroyed fleeing vessels with mechanical precision. The swarm drones pursued those who ran, catching them and tearing them apart atom by atom. In 10 minutes, the greatest invasion fleet ever assembled had been reduced to a cloud of debris and memories. The Battle of Earth was over. In cities across the planet, people who had been waiting to die suddenly found themselves alive. The news spread across every network, every channel, every social media platform. The enemy fleet was gone. A ship called the Covenant had returned from the dead to save them. Humanity was going to survive. Admiral Marsh sat in her command chair on Sentinel-7, staring at the tactical display that showed nothing but friendly signatures and debris. She felt tears on her cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. "Captain Harrison," she said over the comm channel, "I don't know how to thank you. I don't know if there are words for what you just did." "You can thank me by not asking too many questions right away," Harrison replied. His voice sounded tired now, the weariness of decades finally showing through. "My crew needs rest. We've been fighting our way home for a very long time." "Of course. We'll prepare facilities for your crew, supplies, whatever you need." "What we need," Harrison said, "is to see the sky again. Real sky, real sunlight, Earth gravity." He paused. "Admiral, permission to bring the Covenant into atmospheric landing." Blinked. "Your ship is 12 kilometers long, Captain. I'm not sure we have a landing zone big enough." "We'll find one. We didn't come all this way to stay in orbit." The next morning, the Covenant descended through Earth's atmosphere for the first time in 43 years. The ship entered over the Pacific Ocean, its massive bulk casting a shadow that covered miles of water. It crossed the coast of North America, flying low enough that people could see the scars on its hull, the patches and modifications that told the story of battles beyond counting. The landing zone had been prepared in the Nevada desert, a vast stretch of empty land hastily cleared of obstacles and surrounded by military security. But beyond the security perimeter, millions of people had gathered to watch. They came from every state, every country, every corner of the world. They wanted to see the ship that had saved them. They wanted to welcome home the crew that had spent 43 years lost in the void. The Covenant touched down with surprising gentleness, its landing struts settling into the desert sand with a deep, rumbling sigh. For a long moment, nothing happened. The ship sat silent on the dusty plain, its hull ticking as it cooled from atmospheric entry. Then a boarding ramp extended from the lower hull, and people began to emerge. Admiral Marsh stood at the base of the ramp with Secretary General Maria Santos and a delegation of world leaders. She watched as the first figure appeared at the top of the ramp and began to walk down. Daniel Harrison moved slowly, leaning on Commander Grace for support. His uniform was clean but worn, patched in places with fabric that didn't quite match. His face was weathered, his hair white, his eyes carrying the weight of experiences no one on Earth could possibly understand. But he was smiling. Behind him came more crew members. Some were old, original members of the expedition who had aged alongside their captain. Others were younger, born aboard the ship during its long journey, and some were clearly not human at all. The blue-skinned alien called walked beside a being whose body seemed to be made partially of living metal. A creature with too many eyes and not enough limbs scuttled along at the edge of the group, its form unsettling but its manner somehow gentle. Daniel Harrison reached the base of the ramp and stopped. He looked around at the crowd, at the desert, at the blue sky above. He breathed deeply, filling his lungs with Earth air for the first time in 43 years. "Home," he whispered. "We're really home." Secretary General Maria Santos stepped forward. "Captain Harrison, on behalf of all the people of Earth, I welcome you back. You saved us. There are no words to express our gratitude." Daniel shook his head slowly. "We didn't do anything special, Madam Secretary. We just came home. That's all we've been trying to do for 43 years. "Captain," Admiral Marsh said, "I have to ask, what happened to you out there? Where have you been?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked back at his crew, at the hull of the Covenant rising behind them, at the strange collection of beings who had become his family over decades of impossible journeys. "That's a long story, Admiral, a very long story." "We have time now," Maria Santos said. "Thanks to you, we have time." Daniel nodded slowly. "Then let me tell you about what we found and what found us." The Covenant's original mission had been simple enough. In 2304, humanity had finally developed the technology for interstellar travel. The ship was designed to explore the Andromeda Galaxy, 2.5 million light-years from Earth. It was the most ambitious expedition in human history, crewed by the best and the species had to offer. "We made the jump successfully," Daniel explained. They had moved inside a makeshift command tent, away from the crowds but close enough to the Covenant that Daniel could see his ship through the tent's open flap. The drive worked exactly as designed. One moment we were in the Milky Way, the next we were in Andromeda. He paused, gathering his thoughts. But something went wrong with the return jump. Instead of coming back to Earth, we were pulled into some kind of spatial anomaly. A rift. We tumbled through dimensions that our instruments couldn't measure, past stars and galaxies we didn't recognize. When we finally emerged, we were in a region of space so far from home that we couldn't even see the Milky Way. Grace took over the story. "We spent the first 5 years just trying to figure out where we were. The stars were wrong. The physics were slightly different. We had no map, no reference points, nothing familiar." "How did you survive?" Admiral Marsh asked. "We found others," Daniel said. "Other species, other civilizations. Some were hostile. Many were hostile, actually. But some were willing to trade, to share knowledge, to help us in exchange for our help. The Mechanoid Collective gave us weapons and ship upgrades in exchange for our assistance against their enemies," Victor added. His mechanical arm gleamed in the tense light. "The Graviton Lords taught us how to manipulate gravity itself. The Quantum Singers showed us how to navigate between dimensions." "You made alliances with alien civilizations," Maria Santos said slowly. "Species we've never encountered." "Species you've never imagined," Daniel replied. "The universe is far stranger than humanity knew, Madam Secretary, far bigger, far older, and far more dangerous." He leaned forward. "But here's what I want you to understand. In all our years of wandering, in all the battles we fought and the wonders we saw, we never stopped being human. We never forgot where we came from. We never gave up on coming home." Admiral Marsh studied the old captain's face. She saw the lines there, the scars, the marks of decades under pressure. But she also saw something else, something that looked like hope. "Captain, you said that they aren't the worst thing out there. What did you mean?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy. "They are conquerors. Brutal, yes. Dangerous, yes. But ultimately simple. They want territory and resources, same as any expanding civilization. What we encountered in the deep void was different." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, there was a haunting quality to his gaze. "There are things out there that don't want territory. They want everything. They want to consume all of existence, to spread across every dimension and every timeline until nothing is left but them. We call them the Devourers. We fought them twice. We barely survived both times." "Are these Devourers coming here?" Maria Santos asked, her voice tight with fear. "Not yet, but eventually everything comes here. Everything comes everywhere given enough time. That's why we brought back what we did. The weapons, the shields, the technology. Humanity needs to be ready, not just for thee or species like them, for what's coming. Admiral Marsh absorbed this information. It was terrifying. It was overwhelming. But it was also, in a strange way, reassuring. Because if Daniel Harrison and his crew could survive 43 years in the deeper reaches of the universe, if they could fight these devourers and live to tell about it, then maybe humanity had a chance after all. "What do you need from us, Captain?" she asked. Daniel looked at her with something like gratitude. "Right now, rest, time. My crew has been fighting for decades. Some of them have never known anything but battle. They need to learn what peace feels like. And after that, we share everything we've learned. The technology, the knowledge, all of it. We help Earth prepare for what's coming. And maybe, if we're lucky, we help humanity take its place among the stars. As equals, as allies, as something more than we've ever been before." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The Covenant's crew was processed and debriefed, a task that took much longer than anyone expected because of the alien crew members who required special accommodations. Earth's governments argued about how to handle the situation, about who would control the technology the Covenant had brought back, about what it all meant for the future of human civilization. But in the midst of all the politics and confusion, something remarkable was happening. The people of Earth were celebrating. For 14 years, they had lived under the shadow of extinction. Now that shadow was gone, lifted by a ship and a crew that had refused to give up, no matter how far they traveled or how long they were lost. In schools, children learned about the Covenant and its legendary journey. In universities, scientists pored over the fragments of alien technology that had been made available for study. In homes across the world, families gathered to watch the news, to see footage of Captain Harrison and his crew, to feel hope for the first time in a generation. Admiral Marsh found herself spending more and more time at the Covenant's landing site, talking with the crew members who were slowly adjusting to life on Earth. She sat with Victor as he told her about the battle for Mechanoid Prime, where he had lost his arm but gained something far more valuable. She walked with through the desert, listening as the blue-skinned alien described the world it had left behind and the new home it had found aboard the Covenant. But mostly, she talked with Daniel Harrison. They sat together on the observation deck of a temporary structure that had been built near the landed ship. From there, they could see the Covenant's massive hull, and patched but still magnificent. Beyond it, the Nevada sky stretched endless and blue, dotted with clouds that Daniel watched as if he had never seen anything so beautiful. "You know what I missed most," he said one afternoon. "Not the ocean, not the forests, not even the cities. I missed this." He gestured at the sky. Just a simple blue sky with white clouds. In some of the places we traveled there were no skies, only void, only darkness that went on forever. "How did you keep going?" asked. "All those years, all those battles, all that distance. How did you not give up?" Daniel was quiet for a while. Then he said, "There was a moment, about 15 years into our journey. We had just escaped from a hostile species that had captured several crew members. We were damaged, low on supplies, completely lost. I called a meeting of the senior officers to discuss our options." He paused, lost in the memory. "Grace suggested that we find a suitable planet and settle there, build a colony, except that we might never find our way home. It was a reasonable suggestion, a logical one. We had no idea if we would ever find a way back to Earth. Why keep suffering for a dream that might be impossible?" "What did you decide?" Daniel smiled. "I told them a story my grandmother told me when I was a boy. It was about a man who got lost in a forest. He wandered for days, growing weaker and more desperate. He thought about lying down and giving up, about letting the forest take him. But every time he thought about giving up, he remembered his family waiting for him at home. And so he kept walking. He walked until he couldn't walk anymore. He crawled until he couldn't crawl anymore. And just when he thought he would die in that forest, he stumbled out onto a road that led him home. Daniel looked at. I told my crew that we were that man. That Earth was our family waiting for us. That no matter how lost we got, no matter how impossible it seemed, we would keep walking, keep crawling, keep fighting, until we found our way home or died trying. And they believed you. They believed in each other. That's what really mattered. The bonds we formed during those years, the trust we built, the love we developed for one another, that's what kept us going. Not some abstract idea of Earth or humanity. The people right next to us, the family we became. Looked out at the Covenant, at the ship that had carried Daniel and his crew across the universe and back again. She thought about all the battles they had fought, all the wonders they had seen, all the impossible odds they had overcome. What happens now, Captain? She asked. Now that you're home. Daniel rose slowly from his chair and stretched muscles that still weren't used to Earth's gravity. Now we rest, then we rebuild, then we prepare. Prepare for what? Daniel turned to face her. His eyes held that distant look, the one that spoke of experiences beyond human comprehension. For whatever comes next, Admiral. The universe doesn't stop just because we reached our destination. There's always another challenge, always another battle, always another impossible situation that requires humans to be stubborn and brave and foolish enough to keep fighting when any sensible species would have given up. He smiled, and in that smile was the wisdom of decades spent among the stars. That's who we are, Admiral. That's what the Covenant taught us. That's what we brought back to Earth, along with all our fancy technology and alien friends. The knowledge that humans are tougher than we look, braver than we think, capable of more than anyone expects. He started walking toward the Covenant, his steps slow but steady. Come on, he called back over his shoulder. Let me show you the ship. Let me tell you stories about where we've been and what we've seen. Let me introduce you to my crew, human and otherwise. He paused at the base of the boarding ramp and looked up at the vessel that had been his home for so long. The Covenant saved Earth yesterday, but its real gift to humanity isn't firepower or shields or advanced technology. It's proof. Proof that we can survive anything, that we can face the impossible and come out the other side, that no matter how lost we get, we can always find our way home. Admiral Marsh followed him up the ramp, into the heart of the ship that had traveled farther than any human vessel in history. As she walked through corridors worn smooth by decades of use, past crew members who nodded at her with tired smiles, she felt something she hadn't felt in 14 years. She felt hope. Not the desperate hope of people facing extinction, not the fragile hope of those who know they're probably going to lose. Real hope. The kind that comes from seeing proof that miracles can happen, that the lost can be found, that humanity, for all its flaws and foolishness, is worth fighting for. The Covenant had returned from the void, and with it, it had brought something more valuable than all the alien technology in the universe. It had brought Earth's deliverance. The days turned into weeks and the weeks into months. The Covenant's crew slowly adjusted to life on Earth, though for many of them it would never truly feel like home. They had spent too long among the stars, had seen too much, had changed too fundamentally. They were human, but they were also something more. Daniel Harrison spent his time working with Earth scientists and engineers, helping them understand the technology the Covenant had brought back. It was slow work, painstaking work, but it was necessary. Humanity needed to be ready for what was coming. And through it all, the Covenant sat in the Nevada desert, a monument to human determination and the refusal to surrender. Children came to stare at it in wonder. Veterans came to salute it in respect. Pilgrims came from around the world just to touch its hull, to feel some connection to the miracle it represented. On the bridge of the Covenant, preserved exactly as it had been during the long journey home, a plaque had been mounted. It bore the words that Captain Daniel Harrison had spoken to his crew during the darkest moment of their voyage, when hope seemed lost and the void stretched endless in every direction. The plaque read, "We are human, we do not surrender, we do not give up, and no matter how far the universe scatters us, we will always find our way back to each other." Earth had been saved, humanity had been delivered, and the stars that had once seemed so threatening now beckoned with promise. The Covenant had come home, and nothing would ever be the same again.